Hey everybody! Today, Rahdo counts down his top 11 Dominion expansions. Although, before I start counting down, you may be saying, what, 11? Wait a minute, aren't there like 12? Or 13 if you count the base box, or 14 if you count the promos, different expansions for Dominions? Yes, there are, and I am going to talk about almost everything Dominion related today, but I'm kind of categorizing things a little bit, so I'm actually going to do a top 11 countdown. That will make sense, I promise, when I get to it, but before I get to that, I figure, since I've got you here, I should talk about my Dominion storage solution, because everybody's got one, right? Once you pass a certain threshold, you can't keep 10, 11, or 12 Dominion-devoted boxes on your shelf, so you got to come up with something, right? Here's everything I've got for Dominion. This is everything except for a handful of promos. Some of the more recent ones I haven't gotten my hands on. C'est la vie. I've kind of learned to live with it. And how do I have it broken down? Well, let's start with Alchemy. Alrighty, the building blocks of everything. If I open this up, you'll see, hey, it's basically, well, it's a section of two-player money and land, which is why I just keep handy since it's pretty much only Jen I ever play it. But if I ever need it, I do have more money and land because, of course, I've got everything. Although I don't have any of the new pretty money. I just got all the first edition money that isn't quite so lovely. And here's my upgrade packs for base and Intrigue. These are the old cards that have been dutifully locked away. I'm not enough of an expert to know if they should be, but Donald X. Vaccarino, he knows his game pretty well, so if he thinks they're gone, they're gone. Big old sack of all the various and sundry tokens that have been added over the course of the years, and a ridiculously heavy bag of metal coins from all the expansions. Then you've got all the various pads and whatnot for keeping track of things, and the gigantic deck of cards I never use, randomizers. I have no use for them, but I just can't bring myself to get rid of them. So how do I actually set a game up then? You might be asking yourself. Well, let's say I'm going to open the other two boxes. Cornucopia! A cornucopia of cards in here, and half of the rule books. So you can see what I do is I've got them kind of split into these different sections. Here, oops. I don't really have a nice system for, dividers. I just write on one of the blanks. Oh, these are all the Renaissance. Here's Prosperity. Here's Hinterlands. Here's, Nocturne. Wow, it's such a big set. And basically, what I do when I'm going to sit down and play a game with Jen, here's the rest of the rulebooks. The rulebooks that are too big to fit in these narrower boxes. And here's the rest of the cards. Look at them all. And you might think, well, geez, don't they all get mixed up? They can't, because in any one set, I take all the individual cards and I put them in a single card sleeve, because they're sets of 10 or 8 or what have you. I mean, they'll all fit in a card sleeve easily. And so then what I do when I'm going to set up, I just say, okay, what two expansions or the base game am I going to play with today? What am I going to mix and match? And then I just grab a handful randomly from each. Sometimes I mix 3. Normally I just try to mix 2 expansions back and forth because things get a little bit more crazy the more you dilute things down, which again is why I have no use for the randomizers. It's, hey, you know what? Today we're going to mix Empires and Hinterlands. Grab some from here, grab some from here, and then it's easy to put away. It's a really nice system. I'm very, very happy with it. And again, if you just use the sleeves, they don't mix up. Although this is interesting, you may have noticed, hey, that says Thunderstone. Yes, the first edition of Thunderstone, I had some expansions for that, and I really liked how they actually have a built-in divider, which Dominion has never bothered to think, hey, maybe people would like dividers, other than the crazy inefficient ones. So I basically swapped the boxes with the box covers. So it doesn't quite fit as well, but that's okay. Once I put the manual and whatnot in there, it doesn't quite fit anyway. But that, folks, is my storage solution and setup and play solution for Dominion, and I think it works fantastically. And because I'm only mixing a couple of expansions at a given time, you can really get a sense for what makes a given expansion special. Which is a good enough segue into this countdown that I'm about to do. I'm going to be going down 11, which means, for starters, I am not going to talk about the base game of Pandemic today. That's just a given. The base game and all the cards that originally came out for it, it just defines the the Dominion experience. And, so many of these things, other people say, oh, it's like Merchant or with X, or it's like Workshop with Y. So yeah, of course. I think it's great. If I were to rate this, I think it still would be fairly high on the list, or fairly low on the list, fairly early on the list, because so many of these cards are so simple and straightforward. That makes them timeless. That makes them kind of perfect. Or I suppose you say perfect after several of the cards were removed as part of that upgrade pack that I mentioned earlier. I'm not sure where to put it, because it is the floor that everything is built on. So it doesn't feel right to rank it compared to other things, which is why I've left it on the list. Which is why I'm going to start with my number 11, Prosperity. And this, folks, is where I've already lost probably the majority of viewers if you're a Dominion fan. And by the way, I keep stopping myself from saying Pandemic for some reason. Dominion and Pandemic are two of the games I played most in my life, Modern Designer board/card games. So I apologize if I say Pandemic. I'm trying to stop myself. Dominion. Why have I put arguably the most popular, most well-loved expansion of all of Dominion at the bottom of my list? Well, first of all, I should say, there is nothing wrong with Prosperity at all. It is fantastic. It provides a really unique feel, and it mostly comes down to these two cards, Platinum and Colony. Money. It's, Prosperity is all about money, all about making more money than any other expansion and getting to bigger and bigger and bigger turns. Huge turns, epic turns, turns that would seem impossible without the Prosperity or the resources that are given to you in Prosperity. And this is why people love it so much. It can be the cornerstone of a lot of resources, and it's just satisfying. People love coming up with these big, epic turns where you're spending, 11, 12, 13 gold, money all at once to make massive major turns. And that is cool. I won't deny it. I will not deny the fact that I've had a lot of fun playing Prosperity too. But when I play Prosperity, oh, by the way, I should say, I am on wiki.dominionstrategy.com. I'm just using their web pages. This is an amazing website. If you've never been to it before, I'll put a link for it down in the show notes. Just because they very conveniently put all the pictures of all the cards, so I can just scroll through them really quick so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. So anyway, Prosperity, why is it rate low? It's kind of counter. As fun as it is, as satisfying as it is, it feels wrong to me to have such huge, bountiful wealth. It feels counter to what I love most about Dominion, which is, right, what do I got in my hand? What can I do with this? And trying to overcome obstacles that you've built for yourself, depending on the way you built your deck. This game, Prosperity, they could have called it Generosity because it feels too generous. There's actually an old role-playing term called Monty Hall Syndrome, where a dungeon master is just giving the players too much stuff. They're on a Monty Hall. It's just, they're drowning in rewards and resources and all of that. And playing Prosperity feels like that to me. It feels a little too Monty Hall, and I don't feel like I'm suffering enough. I feel like things come too easy, and that's not to say they come easy. Prosperity still allows for tons of strategizing and, dizzying highs and lows depending on what your deck gives you at any given time. Because let's face it, any deck building game is basically a broken engine builder, by which I mean you're building a broken engine that is unreliable, won't always give you what you want, but you're hoping you'll get those big slot machine style paydays when you get the right cards together. Prosperity's great at that. Heck, maybe it's better than most because there's so much you can do. But to me, it just feels like it's too much. And so that's why I don't rate it higher. And that's why probably everything I say from now on is rendered null and void because I'm clearly a moron. I have to admit, I've only played in my lifetime Dominion maybe, I don't know, somewhere between 50 and 100 times. So I'm by no means an expert. I am not some deep Dominion player. As I was getting ready to do this video, I was looking around wiki.dominionstrategy.com and just learning so much about the game because, oh my God, there is so much more depth than I ever knew. It's amazing to me just how deep this rabbit hole Dominion goes. But anyway, Prosperity, almost anybody else is going to list it in their top 3. It's at the bottom of my list. I'm weird. What can you say? Let's move on to number 10 now, Hinterlands. Okay, Hinterlands is very, very cool. The core thing that it added was the notion that when you get a card, when you gain it, something happens immediately. So like cards have these multiple functions. The thing that once it's in your deck, you're going to leverage it throughout the rest of the game. But, let's see if I can find one here. All right, when Nomad Camp, when this is gained into your deck, right. Oh no, this is gained into your deck. All right, instead of just, all right, that's not. All right. When you buy or play this, the Noble Brigand triggers his special power. I mean, they all have various and sundry things. I don't know why I can't. All right, there. Cash. That's really simple. Hey, it's worth 3 gold. That's a pretty big deal, or $3. And when you get this, immediately get 2 copper. So that's awesome. I'm getting effectively a gold, but I'm also having to, water my deck down. That's not awesome. That is awesome. I think that is awesome because that's an example of what I want to see from Dominion. Tough choices, putting me through the ringer and basically busting up my deck. Why would I get cash? Because it's cheaper than gold, but I sure do. I don't want those extra coppers, but I sure do want to get that money quicker. Will I want to deal with that? The consequences of my actions are, any game that accentuates that is, or any expansion, I should say, it really something that's great. Embassy, when you gain this, each other player gains a silver. I want to buy that. Draw 5 more cards when you play the Embassy, even then get rid of 3, but everybody else gets a silver? That's crazy. Again, consequences to my action, and Hinterlands really does that. Another thing that Hinterlands does, though, that puts it lower on the list for me, and this is going to be true for the next few entries. Hinterlands, based on its mechanical addition to the game, this on-gain do thing, is brilliant. But the actual subject matter, the thematic content of Hinterlands is far away, mysterious, exotic lands, Asian lands and Arabic lands. And so you see other cultures coming into the game. And now, don't get me wrong, I think that's great. I love that. But another thing I really love about Dominion that I am going to be laughed at for by announcing this publicly is I have always felt, for the most part, that Dominion is actually a fairly thematic game. It is a strongly thematic game because as often as not, the function of these cards, told through the abstract collection of game mechanisms that is Dominion, tell stories that make sense considering who I am. Which is to say, some French aristocrat trying to expand my Dominion by getting a bunch of provinces as fast as I can. That is always what Dominion is. That is the story. And right from the get-go, as Jen and I first discovered Dominion and played it, we don't just on our turns just play cards as fast as we can, do things. We actually say, well, I'm going to go visit the blacksmith. And that allowed me to discover a cache, which I then took to the trader. I'm just thinking of mixing up random cards here, because it helps solidify the idea that no, I am a person in this world. The deck represents all the things I have access to, all the opportunities as an aristocrat that I have, and am I going to leverage them? And my problem with Hinterlands and a few that come after this is, while it's awesome to broach the broader, wider world, it always feels kind of out of place to me. Wait a minute, I'm a French aristocrat, and suddenly I'm in a spice market how did that happen? Why am I down there? Or let's see, I'm dealing with a Mandarin. What? It's like, from my perspective, the other side of the world. This just doesn't feel, it feels out of place. And so I really have torn feelings because I love the idea of a more inclusionary and expansive world that is presented, but by the same token, it never really felt cohesive to me. If Hinterlands, in addition to introducing these, had introduced mechanisms that help sell the fact that, I'm actually having to travel the world, and that means, because I visit something that's far off to the east, my next turn is affected as a result because I've got to come back home. The fact that there's this thematic break is kind of what makes me stumble a little bit. As cool as Hinterlands is, that's why it rates lower, because I don't think it is thematically coherent with as many of the other expansions are, like Prosperity or the base game. And most of Hinterlands, to be fair. And so it just kind of like, what is this guy doing here? I mean, I guess I could stretch and say, he's traveled to my world. But that's not represented by the art on the card. And again, I know I'm way overthinking this. Nobody else thinks about the theme in Dominion this much, except for maybe Donald X. Vaccarino, the designer himself. But it is an element that impacts my overall enjoyment, which is why Hinterlands didn't make it higher. It's at my number 10. But now let's move on to number 9, Seaside. And based on what I just said, I think you might imagine it's kind of the same thing going on here. Seaside is very, very cool. The number one thing Seaside is known for, I think it was like the third expansion, maybe the fourth expansion, I don't remember, so many years ago, is it introduced the idea of these duration cards, which you have now seen this, these orange cards where, hey, when I put it into play, it doesn't go away at the end of my turn. It sticks around and it has impacts for the rest of the game. That's really cool. Obviously. And, Seaside, has a warm place in many people's hearts because it introduced that. Another thing that's great about Seaside, as I understand it, is it's a really great introduction. If people, they've mastered the base set, they want more, Seaside is a good next step because it doesn't really introduce any really far out crazy ideas other than duration cards. And so that's cool. That's great. I love that. Here's my problem. Once again, if I'm a French aristocrat, hanging out in the area outside of Versailles, hanging out in Burgundy, why are there pirate ships in my life? Sorry. Islands. It just, again, it feels like when I put Seaside next to base cards or prosperity cards, they feel out of place to me. And again, I wish that there was some thematic element. Again, yeah. You could say pirate ship is, well, that just means I'm on the sly as a French aristocrat. I'm actually paying some pirates under the table, and every once in a while, that investment I made in them, even though they're far away, even though they're in the Caribbean, but again, I just lose that cohesion, and that's why Seaside, as great as it is, and don't get me wrong, every single one of these things is great. I had a hard time actually coming up with this list until I realized, yeah, you know what? Theme does matter to me. And some of these, the theme doesn't quite fit as well, which is why Seaside, as wonderful as it is and as well loved as it is, comes in at number 9 for me. And then we move on to number 8, Empires. This expansion introduced probably one of the coolest ideas in any expansions. Actually, for a while, I thought about, should I do this list, not based on expansion, but just based on mechanism? Because, like I said, the debt mechanism here is absolutely fantastic. The idea that... Okay, I've been looking up and down. I can't find any debt cards. I realized I clicked on the wrong. I'm looking at Intrigue. We'll come back to Intrigue in a second. Where is Empires? Did I not open Empires? Oh, shoot. All right, hold on a second. Let me go back to the main page. Somehow, how did I mess this up? I spent quite a bit of time thinking I'd gotten everything prepared, but I totally failed. All right, let's try this again. My number 8, Empires, which introduced the idea of the debt mechanism, which is so cool. Basically, the cards here are very, very neat, and certainly they are much more thematically consistent. We had a blacksmith, now we got royal blacksmiths, engineers, overlords. These feel like people that would be in my sphere of influence in the world. So there's that. But a lot of these cards, you don't pay gold to get, you pay debt, which means you actually take these special little debt and metal coins, and you have to pay them off over subsequent turns. So these are a way that you can basically bankrupt yourself early in the game to get yourself a leg up, and this is such a cool idea, in large part because it is so thematically grounded. This feels like, maybe as a rich aristocrat, maybe I'm quite not as rich as I thought, but I really want to make a big, I'll completely bankrupt my entire estate and have to spend the next 3 turns paying this thing off. But if I can get that thing into play that much faster, it's going to be a really big payoff. It's going to create choices for me that I then have to deal with the consequences, which again is what I really love to see in, I can't think of the word, in Dominion. As well, it has introduced these ideas of events. These are other things you can buy. They come out randomly. Sometimes you buy them with debt. Sometimes you buy them with money. They're just sitting out there, and they give you more flexibility beyond the 10 stacks of cards that you can buy from. That's a really cool idea too, and you've seen this in a lot of expansions. I really like everything about Empire, except for one thing. Again, it's the thematic. Because, I said up front, a lot of these, they fit right, in the back pocket of some French aristocrat. Until you've got chariot racers and gladiators and there's a few others, emporiums and patricians. The Empire's expansion has this whole, it's kind of consistent with everything else, but it's also set in ancient Rome, just because. And this would rate a lot higher. The debt mechanism is so brilliant. I love it so much, but it's the thematic dissonance that tears it back down. And all these things could have been rethemed to be, European empires of the day when the game is actually set. Because, was it set in the 1800s, I believe, in Europe? But it just has this weird, occasionally when I play a card, I go through a time warp and pull out a legionnaire to help me out with my problems as a French aristocrat. And again, I'm probably the only person in the universe who has ever complained about this, but it's what keeps empires further up on the list. And it's too bad. But let's move on to the one I accidentally jumped ahead to, my number 7, Intrigue. Here we are. Now, Intrigue is interesting. It was the first expansion, although when it was originally shipped, it was a standalone game, so you could buy Dominion or Intrigue. And nowadays, I believe, with its second edition, it's only sold as an expansion, which is fine. That's all cool. Hardly matters to me because I've still got the first edition plus the little modifier to replace the cards that were supposed to come out. So, Intrigue is, it's no surprise. Since it was originally packaged as, hey, you could buy the base box or you could buy this and start playing, by its very nature then, it is going to be designed to be easy to pick up and play. It doesn't really introduce a lot of crazy far-out ideas like, say, debt or duration cards or something like that. Keeps it pretty straightforward. It's just kind of a next step after the core game. Why am I rating it here? A couple reasons. One, I love the thematic trappings of this. This is what I'm talking about. When I go into my secret passage to get to the mining village, if I play both of those cards, a little story was told on that particular turn where I played those cards together. Or I had to go tour my estates or whatever it might be. Everything about Intrigue just fits. And it creates a more moody and atmospheric feel. There's going to be a lot more mood coming up later, but that's one of the things I love about Intrigue. The other thing I love about Intrigue is, where is one? Choose one. The phrase choose one. Like if I recruit a minion here, get $2 or discard my card and draw 4 cards. I love that. And of course, choose one. It was introduced in Intrigue. You've seen it since then. But that's what this was all about, and I absolutely love that choice because, again, it's all about I've got my hand of cards. I put this in, and now, as a consequence of that choice I made earlier, I now have to make another choice. In addition to the choice of what am I going to buy, what order am I going to play things, what am I going to trash, what am I going to do with this one card? Nobles, draw 3 cards or get 2 actions. That's a tough choice. Because I have a rough idea of what's in my deck. Should I just go for and leverage more of what I've got? I love the flexibility these things offer while still giving me interesting decisions to make. And interestingly, here are the 6 cards we shall not speak of again. Donald X. Vaccarino decided they're Gonzville. And again, I'm not enough of an expert to the game to say whether they should be or not. I'm happy with my upgraded pack and Intrigue because of the strong theme, and so many of these cards are play this card, make a choice, in addition to the other choices, because that's what makes a great Modern Designer board game is how interesting are the choices. How many choices do you get to make that are impactful and will set your agenda for the remainder of the game? Intrigue delivers that in spades, and I love seeing all these choose now cards. So that's fantastic. So that's my number 7, Intrigue. Then we move on to number 6, Adventures. So, this one offers a couple of new things. Actually, we talked about it a bit before. I've already forgotten. Was it Empires that had events? Let's just go ahead and scroll. Again, these notion of these cards are just sitting out here. I should let you see them all, shouldn't I? Let's just scroll to the bottom and then start paging up. All right, and you can just pause and look at them if you want. Where if you got the money, rather than buying more cards and cluttering up your deck, you can just buy these actions instead. Events are very, very cool. They've been cool every single time they show up. And as you can see, in Adventures, there's a lot of them. An amazing amount of them, in fact. And as well, you've got the Reserve. All righty. Which is a really interesting idea cards like Coin of the Realm or the Rat Catcher, when they're in your hand, you have the option. I think this is one of those games where you get a little mat off to the side. It's your tavern. You can set these cards aside and sort of temporarily pull them out of your deck rather than just using them and throwing them straight in the discard pile like normal. They sit over there to the side and they might sit there for 2, 3, 4 turns so that you can finally get that combo that you were thinking of when you were first starting to put all these cards together. Like I said right up front, a deck builder, as a general rule, is a broken engine because you put these cards in hoping that they will mix and then they will create this wonderful explosion of results, but a deck builder will never give you the cards in the order that you're hoping. Reserve lets you do that because, okay, I'll just set this aside and sooner or later I'm going to go through the rest of this deck. Or I'll get 2 or 3 cards together. Not only am I tightening my deck up so I can go through it quicker to get to other things I want, and not only am I setting myself so, I can use distant lands. So that's interesting. By the way, distant lands, this is another thing that could have easily been in Hinterlands. But the presentation of it here, it feels like, oh, these are distant lands. If I'm using distant lands, I probably had to go on a massive trip this turn, and I rode a camel and stuff like that. Sorry, just as an aside, this is an example of how, the disparate elements can fit in. Distant lands feels like it's still part of my aristocratic life in France because of its presentation. But anyway, sorry, back to reserves. I'd set distant lands aside, royal carriage or whatever it might be, and then use it at just the right time. This is an awesome idea. Really a big game changer, and it kind of typifies what makes Dominion so special. Why, if I ever get around to doing a top 10 deck builders, Dominion is the top of the list because with all these expansions, Dominion has found so many different ways to reinvent itself with the addition and the inclusion of these very, very cool game-changing ideas. Just absolutely fantastic. I love everything about it, and so Adventures comes in right around the midway mark, which just goes to show how much cooler other stuff is still coming. That's number 6, Adventures. Then we move on to number 5, Dark Ages, which is now this one is crazy thematic. Pretty much everything that is coming from this point on, and I would include Adventures and Intrigue too, they just enhance the mood and the atmosphere and the ambiance more and more and more, because as Donald X. Vaccarino has gone on, I think he has, as much as he's always focused on these expansions being tied together with some kind of central game mechanism or 2 or 3 game mechanisms, it feels like more and more he focuses on making sure everything has a story theme to it as well. And the Dark Ages, where you might be having to deal with ruins. In addition to your regular kingdom cards. Ruins are okay. They're not my favorite thing about this. Actually, I'm just going to go on ahead and skip to the end. But you can go on ahead and pause and look at all the different kingdom cards, which are all very, very lovely here. But, and I'll come back to Knights too, because Knights break my heart. But here's the thing. More than anything else in Dark Ages, I love these shelters, which are replacements for the regular estates you start with. And this introduces the idea of unique stuff at the start of your, it's 3 junk cards is fine, but replacing 3 junk cards you just want as soon as possible, in most circumstances, not all circumstances, with a hovel, a necropolis, and an overgrown estate that actually have early game functions. Well, one, that just retro, just gives the game a really nice boost right from the get-go, but instead of, oh yes, I'm a rich aristocrat, and I have estates all over the place, and I don't really care about them at all. They just give me a few points, and that's it. And I'd really like to dump them for other, better, lucrative items. Now, no, I'm not as well off, I thought, because I'm a rich aristocrat in the Dark Ages, and so my estate is overgrown, or it's look at where I live, the hovel. But again, is so often the case with this game. Oh man, I love this hovel. I love the story it tells. I'm living in a shack. Things are it's a dark time. But when I get another victory card, if I had the hovel, I immediately tear it down, and that's where I build. I build over my old, busted down shack to make an estate or a duchy or a province, let's say. And that's a cool story in of itself. That is another example. And the game is chock-a-block where with a little bit of imagination, you don't just look at it just as, oh yeah, that's just replacing one card with another. No, there's a story there. And so often that is a hallmark of a great Dominion card design, that the mechanical trappings of the cards are supported by thematically what it is. That's why Dominion can tell a story if you're willing to listen to it. But anyway, I love Shelters. I love a more rich and interesting starting deck. That in and of itself is very, very cool. But let's go on ahead and talk about Dame Anna and Dame Molly and Sir Bailey, Dame Sylvia. These knights. Which card is it? I forget which card it is, that if you buy that card, you can start. Yeah, if you have the knights, or no, it's the knights where you recruit. Anyway, basically, you can get these knights into your deck. And on the surface, I'm just talking about how much I love story and character and drama. The knights are all about that. The knights are this idea of, hey, these are not generic blacksmiths or chancellors or whatever. These people have names. That is so cool in and of itself, that every time, oh, there's Dame Anna again, or there's Sir Bailey or whatever. So, knights had the potential to be maybe my favorite mechanism in all of it, because these are the most, I mean, it's very, very rare that characters have proper names, so you can get a sense of attachment. Yes, I've got Dame Sylvia in my back pocket. She is my #1 gal throughout this whole game. We're going to win it together. Again, helping enhance the atmosphere and the ambiance and the storytelling. That's great. The problem is, though, and this is why they're so heartbreaking, it's my most heartbreaking card in all of Dominion. When I saw what they did, they all pretty much do the exact same thing, which is, well, in addition to some little things, everybody has to basically joust. I have to, when I play a knight, everybody else, here's Sir Vander, has to reveal 2 cards from their deck, trash one, and trash one of their nice ones and discards the other. So every single one of these knights, as much as I love them, as much as I love the idea, they're all attack cards. And I haven't talked about this much. I mean, Donald X. Vaccarino, he's on record saying he loves attack cards. And in the early days, he used to put them in more and more. As time has gone on, he's put in fewer and fewer and fewer. But it's just such a heartbreaker that maybe my favorite set of cards in the whole game, every single one of them is about attacking. And as soon as somebody has a knight, then everybody else has to get knights as well to protect themselves, or, whatever other things. And I'll just never play with them because I don't want to attack you. I want these knights to be all about cool, wonderful, chivalrous deeds instead of just trying to attack each other nonstop. I almost knock Dark Ages down a few pegs because it's so heartbreaking, but the shelters are so cool. And it's not just the shelters. The other thing that's like the central push for Dark Ages is pillage. Trash this card. Hunting grounds, when you trash this. Altar, trash a card from your hand. Dark Ages more than anything else, which so fits the theme when Europe is in its darkest days and everything is cheap and falling apart and you can't rely on anything. So many of these cards are all about trashing themselves, trashing each other, and making events happen when you trash cards. I mean, I talked earlier about how awesome it was in, which one was it? Oh, in Hinterlands, where when you gain a card, an event happens. Here in in Dark Ages, it's all about when you trash something, things happen. Plus, there's cards that let you get cards out of, the trash pile. So, trashing, of course, is a really big part of the game. Another thing I love about Dark Ages, my wife has always hated trashing cards. And she knows it's not, she knows she should get rid of stuff. She just doesn't like it. Dark Ages was the thing that finally allowed her, when we were playing that, say, okay, I get it. I'll start trashing things. And she became a better opponent for me, and now she beats me regularly. I shouldn't have even ever introduced this to her. But I love the focus on trashing, taking what is already a core element of the game, but really letting it blossom. And that's another thing that makes Dark Ages so fantastic and really stand out, which is why it's my #5. But now, let's move on to #4, Alchemy. Which, again, if you hadn't tuned out right from the get-go when I put Prosperity at the end of my list, the fact that I'm putting Alchemy as my #4 favorite expansion of all times, this must be when you flip the table and swear and unsubscribe from me on YouTube immediately. Let me explain myself, folks. Although maybe, hopefully, it would make sense why this rates for me so high based on what I've said before. Alchemy, it's one central element that it pushes above all else is potions. A new type of currency. that gets added to everything else. Yes, prosperity has currency as well. Was it platinum, I think? But that's just functioning the same. Potions are very, very different. They're expensive, and you need them to buy a lot of the cards. You can't transmute without a potion. Your vineyards won't be successful without potions. And so, throughout the game, you always have this tough choice, depending on what potion-based cards are available. Do I supplement with silvers and whatnot, or do I supplement with potions? Because once I've got potions, I really need to start working on these. And the thing is, often these cards, they're crazy. The cards in this game, let's see, where's my favorite one? I think it's Possession. This is insane. This has got to be one of the most insane cards. I mean, just look at the text of it. The notion that, oh, yes, with my 6 gold and my potion, I will literally possess you and I will play your next turn for you to my benefit. That's crazy. That's awesome. But that is so thematic. Talk about telling a story. Yeah, I went over to your, we had dinner one night and I slipped one of my potions in your brandy. And next thing you know, I control your mind. That's more. Again, this is what I'm saying. That's more than just a collection of mechanisms. That's a story. That's drama. That's excitement. That is narrative. That is theme pulling through. And Alchemy really pushes this idea so much. Also, another thing Alchemy does, I'm not saying it's necessary, a lot of times, because I am this rich French aristocrat, I'm very hands-off. I have all my agents do things for me, and go out and do things in the world. I'm not a blacksmith. I go out and hire a blacksmith. With this game, it feels a lot more like when I play that apothecary card, knowing that it came with my potion, I can kind of feel like, oh, maybe that's me. I'm directly involved. These are smaller things. These are things that are happening at my estate, probably because they're illegal anywhere else. Although the game doesn't really go into that at all. But that's what makes Alchemy so great. And as I said right from the get-go, whenever I play a game, I don't use the randomizers and just get, 1 or 2 cards from every single expansion. Half of or at least a third, if not half of the cards I'm going to play with are going to be Alchemy cards. So it's going to work. It is going to feel good, and potions are going to be worthwhile. I understand, the official rule is when you're using a randomizer, if any one potion card comes into the randomized flop of cards you're going to play with, add potions. And so you might think, well, I'm not going to buy a potion just to buy that one card. That just makes no sense. But I don't know if that's really the way you're supposed to do it. Like I said, for me, mixing 2 or 3 at the most. I mean, once you get 4, things get too diluted and you lose what makes a given expansion special. And you lose, the game becomes much more schizophrenic. It doesn't tell as much of a story. It's not a story of dark magic or intrigue or prosperity for that matter if you mix and match things too much. And to me, so much of the Dominion experience, I'm just repeating myself now, is that theme, that narrative, that story. And Alchemy is one of the best at it because of potions. Because you could play the entire game never buying a single potion card, and that clearly casts me, potion crazy guy, as I'm literally a mad scientist off in my estate doing who knows what in there with all my crazy potions. Again, the world comes to life, and it's thanks to the potions. It's thanks to Alchemy. Never mind the fact that some of these are just some of the coolest crazy cards that have ever come out. You can only get them if you invest in potions. So anyway, that's my number 4. Let's move on to number 3, a much more refined and one might say dignified expansion. And it's the newest one, the one that just came out half a year ago, I think. I only just got it like a month ago, Renaissance. And this is fantastic. Again, wonderfully thematic. All these cards that you come across, they just feel like, yeah, these would all be a day in the life of an aristocrat trying to expand his dominion. Duration cards. Duration cards have been here and there, but this had a big push for duration cards, if I recall correctly. But it also has artifacts and what was the other thing? Artifacts and projects. Right. So, projects are these additional things that sit around. You might have a couple of them in your game, depending on how things go. When I'm going to play with Renaissance, you better believe some of them are going to show up. And these are all very, very cool, additional powers. I'm sorry, I should just let you can just pause and look at them yourself. They're all very, very cool special powers you get access to. Right. And, darn it. Right, where are the artifacts now? Right, okay, yeah. And then the artifacts, which are really neat as well. These do not just sit around. You can see there's no purchase on them. These tie to other cards, like the key. If you have access to the key, this is almost kind of an area control game, because if I get access to the key, this is a power I've got until somebody else takes it away from me. I think this is the one, that introduces cubes, so you can keep track of who controls the key at any given time, which is giving you an extra buck. Why does a key give you an extra buck? Because the way you got the key was by recruiting the treasurer. Tell me that's not thematic. I recruit the treasurer, I get them on my side, and then one of my choices, choose one, remember how much I love that, is take the key. If somebody else has the key, I now have the key until the next time they play their treasure again, and then they can get the key back. Unless they don't need the key anymore and they want to use one of those. I'd rather have $3 right now rather than $1 until it eventually gets taken from them. Very, very cool stuff. All of these artifacts, the flag, the horn, the key, the lantern, and the treasure chest, that are tied to other cards. Again, it's just another really cool idea. Simple little addition to the game that really elevates it and makes things go great. Another thing I should say, let's see here, where is one? Cards, villagers, oh yeah, an acting troupe. I'm so impressed by the play when I went and watched this acting troupe that I basically hired them. And they are now part of my coterie. What does that mean? I have +4 villagers. And then I trash the card. It's gone. And until I hire another acting troupe, I find. Just like that. That's thematic. What are villagers? Villagers are actions you can bank for a later turn, which is awesome. This really blossoms up the possibility space. So villagers are very cool. And this expansion also has coins, except they're not called coins anymore. They're called coffers, I think, now. So you'll see some of them, which is the same basic idea, but instead of banking villagers, which are future actions, you can bank coffers, like a silk merchant. When you gain this or trash this, get a coffer and a villager. So I've got money, I can spend at a later turn. And while the idea of coins, or coffers as they're now called, was introduced with guilds, which I haven't gotten to yet, it's been supplemented and expanded with villagers, and it's something I absolutely love. I complained earlier at the beginning how I didn't like the escalation factor. It's not that I don't like prosperity. I love prosperity. It's just, I like it less than all the others because it felt too much. Too much, too big, too explosive, too always swimming in the billionaire deep end of the pool. Once you get going. Here, this just feels like, oh no, I'm just saving money for a rainy day. I'm just setting stuff aside. It has a smaller, more immediate, more literally, physically, more tactile presence because I can physically hold these coins that are representing future actions I can do, and I absolutely love that. It's fantastic. Renaissance, it's absolutely great. It's just nice. It's simple. It's straightforward. Has these very, very cool ideas. It's and again, so thematically grounded. It just feels like a day in the life. It should, because hey, I've always thought of this game as mostly being set in the Renaissance. That'd be interesting to mix Renaissance and Dark Ages. Would that fit? I guess it almost feel like we're both not French. We're from different countries. One that's like economically booming. The other one's anyway. Hardly matters. Sorry, that's what I think about to me. I love the thematic consequences of mixing and matching stuff. Anyway, that's number 3, Renaissance. Then we go on to number 2, Nocturne, which is, at this point, the most absolute bonkers, insane expansion that ever came out. In fact, actually, it came out right before Renaissance, and apparently, so many people were taken aback by just how crazy off the wall Nocturne is that Donald X. Vaccarino said, okay, I'm just going to simplify and streamline the next game that came out, Renaissance. I like crazy bonkers off the wall. I love the stuff that Nocturne adds. Of course, a whole bunch of new cards, but right off the bat, you'll notice some of them are night cards. This is another huge game changer because for the first time, it adds a whole nother phase. Its base, Dominion has always been A, B, C. I forget what the A is, but then buy and clean up. What is the A? Hardly matters. Everybody knows. I haven't thought about it. But it adds this new phase called Night, where, during your normal, action, buy, cleanup. And normally in Dominion, until you start getting your cards to get extra actions, or you have some villagers set aside or whatever it might be, you used to do 1 action a turn. It's part of the ramp up of the game. Now we have action by night cleanup. And what happens in a night, if you end up really focusing on dark, spooky nighttime activities, by being a night watchman, or hanging out in a ghost town, or dealing with changelings, or this is kind of getting in that same dark, spooky alchemy, dark ages vibe. Again, exorcisms, all these cool things that are very cool and exciting, dramatic. If you dabble in them, if you have a deck full of night stuff because you really focus on that, there is no limit to how many things you can do at night when no one's watching. You get one action a day, you get all night long to do whatever you want. So you can create some very interesting card combo chains and not be limited by the hard one action per turn thing, and that's awesome. I love that idea, and it's really leveraged to very good effect here. And then there's one other thing I really, really love, heirlooms. I talked a bit before about, the shelters? The idea of, jettisoning the regular, boring, yada, yada, yada estates to have shelters that, kind of spice up your starting deck. Heirlooms are even better because they spice up your starting money. These things replace base coppers depending on which cards that might be in the game. If there are certain cards in the game, then you will have a lucky coin, or a curse coin, or a pouch, or a pasture, or a haunted mirror, or a magic lamp, or a goat in your starting deck instead of just another boring old copper. And then there's a bunch of other cards too. Another thing that's crazy about Nocturne, when you set it up, Nocturne, I think, more than any other expansion, makes Dominion feel more like a modern deck builder. Dominion, it has wisely always stuck to that very simple, clean ABC. Look, every turn is super simple, super fast so that I don't blame people for not paying attention to the theme. I mean, probably most people wouldn't enjoy playing with me because I would slow it down by always telling my little stories about what I'm doing as I'm building up towards my ultimate province I'm trying to get. But anyway, for most people, it's fast, and just keep it simple. Just keep those same tactics. Maybe a couple of things. Nocturne adds so much stuff off to the side, and all very, you want zombies and imps, so much stuff gets added with this expansion. It's absolutely crazy. And like I said, it feels more like something that was designed today, because these days, a hallmark of a great design is what I like to call kitchen sink design, where the designer, I'm not holding anything back. I'm throwing every idea I had in here. Gloomhaven, of course, is the standard bearer for this, where every idea, every mechanism Isaac Childress ever thought of made it into the box. This kind of feels that way, and I really like it. It feels very, very different, and if I want to go back to simple, clean, elegant, streamlined Dominion, I just don't play with Nocturne. No problem. And that's why when I do play with Nocturne and mix it with Intrigue or something like that, suddenly, that's going to feel like a very different game than the last few games I played. And it's why Nocturne is my number 2. I'm absolutely bonkers with it. But it's not my number 1. And here, folks, in case you've been keeping track of, how does this work? Because I've only said my top 11. Well, again, I jettisoned the main game. I didn't count that because it's the floor that everything is based on, is compared to. But the other thing is, Cornucopia and Guilds are tied for my number 1. And the reason for that is because you can only buy them together now. They are no longer sold separately, because these were both tiny little expansions, didn't offer much, and eventually Rio Grande said, hey, you know what, let's just package them in just one regular size box. And if you ever find them now, you will only find them together. So that is why I'm saying the Cornucopia Guilds, or the Guilds of Cornucopia, is my number 1. Now that's mostly for the Cornucopia, because the new thing in Cornucopia, again, super thematically grounded, all this stuff just feels right, and it makes, why weren't these, why didn't I have a Jester from the beginning? But again, not very many cards. But a universal thing amongst these cards is that they reward players for going for diversity in their deck building, which is completely the opposite of smart, strategic Dominion play normally. Dominion is all about, right, these are the 10 cards that are available. Right, if I get that thing and that thing together, and with this to supplement that, that's going to be amazing. I'm going to build a deck around that. Let's go. Let's see how well that plays out. And that tends to mean you focus. Maybe there's a few gateway cards that'll get you to where you need to go, but then you just focus on just a few cards. And often, many of the cards just go completely ignored. In Cornucopia, all that gets thrown out the window because all of these cards, or not all of them, but most of them, harvest. Reveal the top 4 cards from your deck, then discard them. $1 for every differently named card. And when you're playing Cornucopia and you're buying these cards, you want to have a wide variety of things. You do not want to go monolithic. You don't want to focus on just 2 or 3 things. You want to get everything so that all these different Cornucopia cards, including the Horn of Plenty, a Cornucopia itself, will pay out to best effect. And I love that. Getting back to what I said earlier, for me, putting aside the theme, which is a big part of Dominion, I love the choices and then consequences, the 1-2 step that makes Dominion so special. And in this game, the consequences of chasing after a Cornucopia means, well, one, it's a bit tougher maybe to come up with an overall strategy. The game becomes much more tactical than strategic, but oh my gosh, it just makes the game have so much fun and flavor. Every time you play, you're going to get a different combination of cards that are constantly pinging off each other. And, every hand, once you've gotten going a little bit, is the potential for a lovely discovery. Every hand is not, well, did I get what I wanted? No, I didn't. Okay, well, I'll try and work this out instead. Instead, it's like, oh my God, I got these 2 things together? Let's see how that plays. And I love it to pieces. It's my absolute favorite thing that has ever happened to Dominion. And I hope someday, if Donald ever does do any more expansions, he revisits this idea because the Cornucopia was a very, very tiny expansion and didn't get much love. So I absolutely adore it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing just because it really makes the game feel differently. And then while we're talking about, since Guilds, which is a very nice expansion, to be fair, Guilds would probably be somewhere in the 5-6 range if it were by itself, but it's kind of riding on Cornucopia's coattails. But I don't mean to downplay Guilds. It's got great cards too. It is the one that introduced coins, which were later renamed coffers in Renaissance, whatever. But that's fine. And that's very, very cool. For reasons I talked about earlier, it also has this idea of overpaying, where when you buy a card, you can pay more than you had to, and if you do, you get extra benefits or extra bonuses. You can spot them because they've got this little, it's 2+. So you can just pay 2, or, and that's a beautiful idea. Because often, as the game escalates, and now I'm making $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 a turn instead of my starting just, trying to get 2 or 3 together. Well, I don't really want to buy the old stuff anymore. I'm up at the high end. But hey, stonemasons might still be worthwhile if I want to throw a lot of money and overpay when I get into it. And that's a really, really cool idea. I would love to see that more often. As you can see, there weren't that many, unfortunately, and I think it's a great, great idea. Again, so Guilds and Cornucopia, I think they were back to back, and then they both got balled into one. So it's kind of a schizophrenic if you think of it as one thing, because they're 2 small expansions that both have really awesome ideas, but neither of them push those ideas far enough forward as if they'd been a full big box expansion. Like I said, hopefully Donald will revisit both of these ideas somewhere in the future. But anyway, that's it, folks. Oy vey, my countdown for the Dominion expansions. I didn't want to talk about promos. Like I said up front, I've got most all of them, but I've stopped chasing them because they're always funky and silly. But they're not real game changers. Although that black market is insane. I didn't show you. Where's my black market? Which box is it in? No, it's not in there. Is it in here? Yeah, because here's where all my bonuses are, just in one little area. And here is my black market. At some point, there was a math trade I was in, and somebody was saying, hey, at the time, I'll give you 1 of every card that's ever existed without having to use the randomizers. And now this is way out of date, so my black market isn't as up to date as it could be. C'est la vie. But still, promos, they're fine, but I don't care about any of them enough. Honestly, I wouldn't worry about them too much, folks. I used to chase after most just because I was a completionist. I rarely use them, and there's so much, as I just talked about, with the actual games that you pay money to get, that have gotten all the extra testing and love and attention as opposed to promos, which are just often like, oh, that was an idea. Yeah, let's put it on a card and make it a promo. I neither confirm nor divide or deny the balance of said card. Dominion, folks. It's in, what was it? I think it's like my number 14 game of all time. It's in my top 15 games. I love it. It's the best deck builder, and it continues to be because of what I just talked about. It's absolutely amazing. Donald X Factor, deserves the Spiel des Jahres that it won. It did win, didn't it? I think it did. But anyway, folks, that was it. My top 10 of the month was actually a top 11. And I'm just going to say now, thank you very much for watching. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.